Hi guys, how's it going? Ivano here with a new video, and today we are ranking the best tacticals for AP PowerTech as of patch 7.3. Starting of course with Neural Trigger. So this one previously was the best in slot one that everyone was running, but it has been nerfed this patch. So unlucky if you just got it maybe, because previously it used to hard stun a target for 2 seconds after you taunted them. Now it will only root them. So what does it mean for Neural Trigger? Should you deconstruct the tactical? I think not. It is definitely weaker and it's not going to be the overpowered tactical that you're always going to be using from now on. But I think it still has its uses. For example, in Hardball, if you want to root a ball carrier and prevent them from scoring, then this one can actually be stronger than the old Neural Trigger, because the 2-second root will not fill up the resolve bar as opposed to the stun that it used to have before. So I can still see people using Neural Trigger in Hardball, but it's definitely not the best overpowered tactical that it used to be before. So for me, this goes into situational tier. Next, BioWare introduced a new tactical that is intended to buff the sustained DPS of PowerTechs, and it's called Energized Fembrace. I've already made a whole video on why I think this one is not the one to go for, at least for PvP, but the short version is it buffs your sustained damage, but it doesn't buff your burst. And of course, APPT is a burst class, especially in PvP. We want to focus on burst. This one just unfortunately doesn't really do anything about that. When it was first released on PTS, it also buffed Rail Shot and Energy Burst by 20%. So that would have been a great tactical actually, but unfortunately that was a little bit too powerful for BioWare to release. So instead, now it only buffs the damage of your retractable blade, which is your bleed, of course, and magnetic blast, so your smallest damage abilities. And that's why for me, Energized Fembrace, while it is a damage buff compared to using Neural Trigger, it's not great, it's just okay. Next up, Superheated Fuel. You might be thinking, why is this in the AP tacticals at all? And of course you would be correct, this is a tactical for PowerTech. I just included it because some people might have the idea that it will give you 100% auto crits also on AP, but of course AP doesn't have any flame attacks, so this one is useless. Don't use it if you're playing AP or Tactics. Next one, Overwhelming Offense. So this tactical, some people were already using it before the patch. This will basically give you 5 stacks as you do damage to your targets. Each of these stacks will buff your damage by 1%. So if you can keep them up, this is a damage buff of 5%, which is quite significant and actually the biggest buff out of all of these tacticals. That's exactly why people before the patch were using it in PvE and some of them even in PvP. Now, as of this patch, this is actually one of my 2 main tacticals. Why? Well, because simply said, 5% damage is always very good. You can keep the buff up in PvP, especially if you have your bleed on multiple targets. The bleed procs will stack this buff, so you're not going to lose it really that often. And 5% damage is 5% damage. Even though it's not a crazy tactical, it is a little bit more damage. It does affect your energy burst. It does affect your thermal detonator for the big crits. So it buffs your burst, it buffs your sustained DPS, and you don't really need to micromanage anything just to keep the stacks up. You're just going to keep doing your normal damage rotation. And for that reason, because damage is king in the current meta, and this one gives you the most single target damage, I put it in always good tier. Next up, we have Flying Fists. Yeah, this one, of course, exists for a long time. I have tried to use it. I have yet to find a real useful application to this tactical. With the PowerTech build that I'm running, you have 15 meters range on all of your abilities. So this one isn't even that good. It basically just increases the range from the normal 4 meters to 10 meters. Only affects one ability. Rocket Punch is not even one of your big burst abilities. So this tactical, in my opinion, is just really bad, and I would pretty much never use it. Okay, 3 tacticals left. First off, we have the Life Warden. This one is actually really good. It, of course, gives you a heal to full when you drop below 20%. So this one is, in my opinion, really useful if you're playing arenas, right? In arenas, as PowerTech, you typically are going to be targeted first because you don't have any real way to recover or get out of combat. This one gives you a way to recover. So always when I play arenas, I have this one ready. And maybe if the match goes to round 3, I will pop in Life Warden, and then you get that nice heal to full. and you can live a bit longer, do a bit more damage, and maybe win the arena. It does have a rather lengthy cooldown of 10 minutes though, and this does not get reset in between matches. So the 10-minute cooldown will be a 10-minute cooldown no matter what you do, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have Power Detonator, and this one was introduced recently. It's the second newest PowerTech tactical just before Energized Fembrace. Some people really like it. Unfortunately, I am not one of them. So this one basically makes it so that your thermal detonator will remain on the target for 12 seconds, and then you can explode it for different effects depending on which of your abilities you use. So, for example, if you detonate it with Magnetic Blast, this will slow your target for 50% for 10 seconds, which of course is nice, but then again, even though it's a rather lengthy slow, a lot of classes have a way to cleanse that off, and then you have to wait until your next thermal detonator to reapply the slow. Of course, you also already have another slow if you spec into suppressive tools, and those slows don't stack, so this effect is kind of meh. Detonating the thermal detonator with Energy Burst will then reset the cooldown of your Rocket Punch and makes it free of use. But again, Rocket Punch only has a 4-meter range, damage is okay, and the heat cost thing, alright, it's probably less of a thing in PvP than it is in PvE, so I would not really use that. And then the rail shot thing is just a meme. It buffs your shoulder cannon damage by 20%, which in terms of a damage buff is really laughable. Like, you're not really going to feel that damage. The only real use, in my opinion, for Power Detonator is so you can counterplay some classes, such as snipers. Sniper, typically, if they're good, you will put the thermal detonator on them, and it will explode after a little bit more than 3 seconds. And if the sniper is good, they can use their roll to resist the damage. But of course, with Power Detonator, it just remains on the target and they can never roll it. So that's an advantage, but then again, it's really only useful in the specific context against snipers. And if you're playing against any other class, I would rather have a different tactical. So that's why, for me, Power Detonator is just situational. Last but not least, we have Flame Detonation. And this one has been a favorite of mine for a long time. Of course, if you watch this channel, then you know that I enjoy damage farming. And this tactical is definitely the best for farming AoE damage. So this one works as follows. You put Thermal Detonator on a target, then you hit them with Flame Sweep, and then the Thermal Detonator will explode, doing damage to everyone around them. And while this is not the full Thermal Detonator damage, it does add quite a lot of AoE, which PowerTech otherwise lacks. And then again, Flame Detonation you can actually also use to counterplay snipers, because as I said, normally they expect that after you put the Thermal Detonator on them, it will take them a little bit more than 3 seconds for the detonator to explode. But with this tactical, you can actually control when you want the detonator to explode, so you can have it explode earlier. So in a way, it's a little bit similar to the Power Detonator way to outplay people. But then again, you have the added benefit of having the AoE damage on top of that. And that's why for me, Flame Detonation is also in the always good tier. Which one you should use, it depends a little bit. I mostly run with Flame Detonation, because if I get in a Void Star and I cannot switch tacticals, then I would rather have Flame Detonation, because Void Star is quite of an AoE fest usually. But Overwhelming Offense is also very good for all other cases. And then I usually have these 3 tacticals in my inventory in case I need to swap them on for an arena or a hardball or something. So that's it for today. Let me know what you think about this tier list. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.